4 promises that God gives this man. You'll be a great nation. You'll have a great name. You'll bring great news. You'll become a great need. Let's look at all 4 one by one. You'll be a great nation, as the Lord says here. I will make you a great nation. Now, you got to know that God has a great sense of humor. To tell a 75-year-old man who has a wife who has been infertile her whole life and is also aged, to make a statement like this, I'm going to make you a great nation. But we also know it is exactly what happened. Eventually, Abram became Abraham. He had children. There was Abram, and then Isaac, then there was Jacob, then there were the 12 sons of Jacob that became a nation that floundered for a while as slaves for 400 years in Egypt, were delivered out of Egypt, brought into the land of Canaan, grew, multiplied, and out of that became a monarchy and a great nation. Today, over in the Middle East, exists what is relatively, geographically speaking, a tiny nation, the nation of Israel. Israel has a population of about 7.8 million people. 5.9 million of them, 75%, are Jewish in their origin. They have experienced a 43% growth increase due to immigration. And it's a pretty great nation. What's been interesting over the last several years, as economies around the world have been faltering, the economy of Israel has gotten stronger and stronger. Today it's a $10 billion per year economy. It happens to be the 4th leading exporter of citrus and the 3rd leading exporter of flowers around the world. Because God made a promise. Outside of that little town of Bethel, a great town of biblical significance, the mayor of that town, who takes a trip from Jerusalem to Bethel where he lives, he says every day he passes an intersection that has a sign in it. It was put there by a local grocer. But he ponders it. The sign reads, here in Bethel, 3,800 years ago, the creator of the world promised the land of Israel to the people of Israel. It is by virtue of this promise that we dwell today in Haifa and Tel Aviv and Shiloh and Hebron. God made them a great nation. They went down to Egypt. They were slaves. Those slaves came out of slavery and came to a place of great influence. In fact, they became the showcase of what God can do, the showcase of God's blessing to the whole world. I love to go to Israel. I've been to Israel now 35 times. I'm going again in a few months. Can't wait to go there. Every time I'm there, I think this is the place Abraham came. This is the land the prophets proclaimed in. This is the place that David and Solomon reigned. This is the place that the greater Son of David, Jesus Christ, the Messiah, was born in, died in, rose again from the dead in, left into heaven from, and will come back to, as it says in the book of Acts. A great nation. But this nation, as great as it is, has seen great conflict. One of the things we've always noticed about Israel, the land of Abraham, is the place that it occupies in the news. The nation of Israel is 1/300th the size of China. It gets more than 3 times the headlines that China gets in the news. There's an old saying in the Talmud, one of the Jewish writings, that says 10 measures of beauty were given by God to the world. Jerusalem got 9 of them. The last one was distributed to the rest of the world. But it goes on to say 10 measures of suffering came to the world, and 9 were taken by Jerusalem, and 1 was dispersed through the rest of the world. Some of you will remember the movie Fiddler on the Roof. Remember that movie? Remember the patriarch of the movie, Tevye, as he's struggling with his Judaism in the land of Russia, and he comes to one portion in the movie where he looks up to heaven. And he speaks to God and he goes, I know we're your chosen people, but once in a while, couldn't you choose somebody else? A great nation that has experienced great conflict. But this great nation that has experienced great conflict has also seen great resurrection. The prophet Ezekiel, as you know, in chapter 37 of his prophetic writing, spoke of the day when the Jewish people around the world would be regathered against all odds like dry bones. there would be a resurrection of that people, a coming together of that people. In 1911, the Encyclopedia Britannica said these words, and I quote, "The possibility that we can ever again recover the correct pronunciation of ancient Hebrew is as remote as the possibility that a Jewish empire will ever again be established in the Middle East." Close quote. That was 1911. Just around the corner was 1948. And what Encyclopedia Britannica said would never happen, happened. And if you go to Israel today, you see two things. Number one, Jews speaking a revived Hebrew language. And number two, they do so in their ancient homeland. God said, "I will make you a great nation."